Toy Grails. The Toy Grail is a topic that affects every single collector, no matter how serious. If you get into this hobby, if you love toys, if you love collecting, chances are you have certain grails, certain things that you're after, or certain things that are dreams that will never be accomplished. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but toy grails are different for every single person, and for different reasons. Some people, their grail is as simple as collecting the figures they had as a child. Some toy grails are certain play sets that they never received as a child. Some grails are a figure that is so far beyond your economic reach that you simply cannot acquire it, or something that is so rare that you will probably look your whole life and maybe never even see one, let alone actually own one. And some are very simple. Very simple. Something as easy as, I would love to have Red Suit Daredevil on the shelf. I mean, yeah, that sounds about ridiculous to some people, but to others, that one character that has eluded them, that would just make them feel like they've completed something. That could be a big deal. For some people, it's an item that doesn't even exist yet. The ultimate, now I'm not talking about ultimates like the Ultimates, but the ultimate Fantastic Four set of figures, and they don't believe it's happened yet. That could be simple. That could be something that says, or it could be, I would love, my grail would be to have a 1990s X-Men collection of the comics that you read, and you just don't feel like the figures that have been put out match the standard of what you're looking for. It could be as easy as or like I said, things that don't exist. Maybe to some people they're still saying even now that, maybe they never got the Tila they wish had actually been made. Maybe they wish that certain characters, like maybe for them, an absolute grail of collecting would be that they would get a set of Dragon Ball figures that were solid. Or for that matter, like it's just finally happening now, maybe a grail for some people was actual articulated, fully posable Pokemon action figures that simply were not a thing at the time. They were not a thing. They're a thing now. You see them in Targets and stuff like that. But when I was growing up, and for the most part, as far as I remember, and as far as I've known, Pokemon toys were always very simple. They were slugs. They were simple, one-shaped plastics, no real articulation. And if they did have articulation, it was very simple. Or maybe the articulated figure, the only one that there was like there was an Ash Ketchum. That was it. Ash was fully articulated. But the rest of it, no. Ash throws out Pikachu. Pikachu is literally plastic slug. This is different for everybody. And so when we talk about grails, it's important to get that out of the way before we even start this conversation. I want to go over what my specific toy grails are for the different lines that I currently collect. What would make me feel like I have obtained the grail? For some of these, it's going to be very simple. For some of these, it might not be very simple. For some of these, it may be impossible. And actually, I'm going to do this on the fly as well. So I've got a set of pictures. I took pictures of the collection, of the different things that I hard focus on. And we are going to go through each picture and kind of decide where we feel each one of these things leads us. Like, what is the best of the best, right? Let's do that. So we've discussed how complicated some grails can be. And we've discussed how impossible some grails can be. Well, this is Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is a property that I've collected for years. Now you're looking at this, and it's almost laughable that I could say that I've collected for years. But I have. And I really have. I collected Ghostbusters for years. I would collect them and I would get rid of them. And I would collect them and I would get rid of them. And I would collect them and I would get rid of them. Because nothing necessarily ever felt concrete to me. That's true. The Kenner line of Ghostbusters classics. The original classic retro Ghostbusters. Those, and I probably shouldn't have said classics because chances are with all the Motu classics and DC classics and things of that nature, maybe there is a Ghostbusters classics. This right here, the Kenner line of Ghostbusters right here, the old retro line, those were fantastic. For what they were at the time, they were absolutely fantastic. But there was always something lacking about them. Always something that I never felt 100% satisfied. The colors weren't 100% spot on. The guns being these hard, these hard pieces that, you know what I mean? Like, when you take them off their back, you would have to cut that plastic off if you wanted to or whatever to remove the beam effect and things like that. I didn't want to do that. They didn't move very well. There was something left. There was something missing, something to be desired from these figures. So I actually have 2 Grails. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done with Ghostbusters. I really am. This is it. I don't want anything else. Or I didn't. Because what I wanted was never going to be a thing. I wanted figures on par with the plasma series that are sitting back there for the real Ghostbusters. And now, Mondo is about to do that. If Mondo's doing that, that's done. It completes it for me. That would be the end of the collection, except for 2 possible Grail pieces. One is very simple and very stupid, but I want it. I want Janine in a Ghostbusters outfit from the original Ghostbusters, the movie line, as well as Janine in a Ghostbusters outfit for the cartoon line. I want that. I don't care that it's a what if and that you would have to slip Janine, the actress and whatnot, and get her. I want it. I want the younger Janine in outfit looking like they would I just want it. But I also want the toy of it. That's something that I know kind of exists, but not in the way that I would like. So we'll see what happens there. And we'll see what Mondo does, for that matter, because they're the ones that are about to try to make part of this happen for me, as if they're doing it just for me. The next one for this, I would love to get a complete Firehouse. Complete Firehouse. Nothing missing from the Firehouse. The Firehouse is complete. That is a Grail for me. One that is, you could argue, easily obtainable. If I have $130 to blow, I could probably get one. Right? I actually don't know. I haven't looked up the price of this, and I don't believe it to be so outlandish that it would be impossible for me to get a hold of. But as I feel right now, I feel like $130, $150 almost a guarantee would get it for me. That's Ghostbusters. The Power Rangers. Now this, and yes, I know the shelf is dusty. Look, Power Rangers is one of those things that I feel like I'm pretty much done with. I know a lot of people really like the Hasbro collection, and the stuff that came out with the Lightning collection, I know a lot of people liked that. I was not impressed or moved enough to move past what I already had. I have my team. This was the team that I grew up with. These are my original 5. I have the 2 6th Ranger versions. I have my favorite Ranger of all time. I have my favorite villain. I have one of the coolest new Rangers that have literally ever been created. I'm happy. I'm completely happy with what I have. Now, I do have a Megazord, and I guess a Grail of sorts would be this. It would be awesome to get a Paramidas that was good, not like the toy that I feel is pretty much bad. A good Paramidas, a solid Megazord that moves well, a Thunder Megazord that moves well. And I guess if I'm replacing them, I would replace the White Tiger, and it would also be cool to have a solid Dragonzord. Now, I know some of these things exist, but they exist at very high price points. I'm just simply not willing to buy into right now. So that keeps them Grails for me. Maybe someday I'll find myself with extra money. Maybe someday, at the exact same time I find myself with that money, I'll also find myself looking dead in the face of one of these things that I want. Maybe. I don't know. And to put it in the same category, it would be really cool to have a solid Voltron. That's also something that sometimes comes to mind, is, to me, Power Rangers always felt like Voltron anyway, which I guess, to be fair, it kind of is, but you get the idea. So it would also be cool to have a Voltron and maybe the pilots. But as far as Grails go, and even though this seems like one of my hard focuses, it's not. Just like Ghostbusters has a Grail, I'm pretty much done with it, aside from maybe Mondo will really surprise me with these new things coming out. And Rangers, I'm pretty much done with unless something shocks me. But I still felt that it needed mention because there is kind of a Grail at play here. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Do I have a Grail for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Well, this one is difficult. See, I pretty much already have what I want. Realistically, I would love to finish this line of figures right here. Not the entire thing, just the main wave of figures that I want. I have Leonardo. I'd love to get the other 3 Turtles and Splinter. That's more like a completion. That's more like a goals thing. Is there a Grail? Is there a hardcore Grail figure or item from the Ninja Turtles? You know, I don't know. It's possible that for this line, there's nothing that stands out so extremely to me that I would create a Grail. And I guess that's surprising to me when I really stop and think about it, because, like, there's so much stuff from Ninja Turtles that I feel like anything that you want is already there. But maybe, just maybe, if I have to come up with one, and this also sounds like a collection goal, but to me it is kind of a Grail because I've yet to find one that really blows me away and makes me want it like right now. And maybe there's one in this line of Ultimates that exists that if I could find it and if the price was right, maybe that's what I'm going for. I would love to have a new age, fully posable, awesome Usagi Yojimbo in the style that was done with these, same kind of figure that existed back in Playmates that I owned. I thought that bunny was one of the coolest things ever. And as of yet, I haven't walked across one that makes me freak out and need it. I saw one that was in black and white. I didn't want it. I saw one that was like the space one or whatever. I didn't want it. The ones that I've come across in person at Target are not the ones I want. I want the original Playmates Usagi Yojimbo in all of its glory, modernized articulation. That would probably be a Grail. That would probably be one of my all-time favorite Ninja Turtle figures on the shelf. Otherwise, I am continually happy and satisfied with what I have. Turtles isn't one of those that I'm actively seeking a Grail or have anything to hunt necessarily. I just kind of pick them up as I see them and like them. And then I also pick them up very sparingly, depending on what they are. And I have a very hard rule. 4 turtles, shredder, splinter, done. Only after I finish that main input of any given line will I expand into that line. Like the Ultimates, I've thought about buying an April O'Neil because I do kind of really like the Ultimates April O'Neil. But at the same time, I'm not stuck on it in a way that makes me feel like this is a must. The must is the 4 turtles, splinter, shredder. Done. And then I'll move from there. You had to know this one was coming, right? If you've watched my channel at all, you had to know that we would get here. Masters of the Universe, Masterverse. I love this line. What is a grail for Masters of the Universe, Masterverse? First off, let's start with a collection goal. I think, and I'm dead serious about this, I don't think this line has produced a figure I do not like. I think I want it all. The whole line, every single character. That is very difficult in some cases, because, like, Web Store is, yeah, he's like a $200 figure now. Not worth it. I'm saying it. Aftermarket prices can only stretch to a certain point before they become, as far as I'm concerned, they are unaskable. Masterverse is a $25, $40 line. Aftermarket prices, I could accept double the price of a normal figure if it is rare. If the Sorceress sold out everywhere and you could not get her and she was out of print, I could accept her moving up to a $40 and or $50 figure. Hey, I get it. It's aftermarket. It is what it is. But I could also see that in a deluxe like Battle Cat or Cringer, I could also see that being a $40 figure that moves into the $80 or maybe even $90 bracket, depending. Arguable. But when Web Store reaches $200, he is not worth that. I don't care about his rarity. That is, it's simply a false price. It's not a thing. I refuse. I absolutely refuse. He's not worth that. And until those prices come down, whomever the guys are that have him, that are trying to sell him, they're going to sit on him. That's not a real price. It's not reasonable. But all that aside, I know this is if you haven't realized yet, this is kind of like a toy podcast, and so I go on rants here and there and just kind of talk toys. If I had to set a grail for Masterverse, aside from literally owning the entire line, I have one. It doesn't exist yet. It's Grayskull. Just like classics before it had a Castle Grayskull, it is inexcusable for a line this successful, and yes, I will argue that this line is very successful. I don't know how you would argue otherwise. Masterverse has went wave after wave after wave after wave after wave. It has produced character after character after character after character and has done some fantastic work and does nothing but get better and better and better. So, regardless of any personal feelings that one might have, this line is a successful line. But every successful line in the history of all Motu has had a Castle Grayskull. Even Pops had a Castle Grayskull. There is a Castle Grayskull for Pops, Classics, Origins, the original stuff. If you are a successful line, you have a Castle Grayskull. And these figures, unlike the retro line, okay, unlike the retro figures that are, how do I put this? The retro figures that were then kind of recreated by Super 7, they were just using the original Castle Grayskull because it was kind of built that way as an expansion of the original line. So they kind of fit in the original castle. That's fine. This is not the same thing. Masterverse has its own identity over classics and has been that way since the beginning. This is not kind of like a continuation of classics. It is its own line, standing alone apart from that idea. And because of that, it needs a Grayskull. Grayskull is the centerpiece of every single Motu collection. That is the way that it is. That's the way the toy line was designed from the beginning. And it has been understood in every single possible line. Even the minis. So, Masterverse, that would be my grail. We need a Castle Grayskull. And I'm just going to say it. Super 7 did a Cat's Lair. Are we really going to be outdone by Super 7 Cat's Lair? Is that going to be a pinnacle of the 7-inch action figure barbarian lines? Or is Motu going to step up? Because right now, you're dropping that ball hard. We need a Castle Grayskull in this line. That is my absolute, that's my choice, that's my grail. If there was anything I could own, anything, and this one is one that just doesn't exist yet, that's it. Motu in general, a grail, would be the Classics Castle Grayskull. But I simply cannot afford it, and I simply cannot justify it. It's a lot of money. It's like $1,500 to get one now. And I simply don't have it. And even if I do have it, I simply don't have it. Star Trek Playmates. That's specifically what I collect in terms of my Star Trek collecting currently. There have been other things that have come my way over the years that I've been interested in, but nothing captures my childhood and original interest like the Playmates line does for Star Trek. I loved this. I loved it growing up. I still love it today. If I was to pick a collection goal, I would tell you that I want the original crew and I want the Next Generation crew standing in front of their ships. There, that one's easy. I would also like to point out that these back here, these Playmates figures right here, I wouldn't mind having them, the entire original crew, standing back behind all of them. That would be fantastic for me. I don't know about the Next Generation in that style, but the original crew, standing there, 100%, that line specifically, fantastic. I would love it. Now, what would be a grail, though? Realistically, I got to put a grail down. I got to say this is something that realistically either doesn't exist or I've never really come across. Two things. One, a Next Generation bridge set. I never got that when I was a kid. And it was something that always kind of blew me away. Now, this is a grail for a couple of reasons. One, I have had a couple of chances to buy it. I even found one that was complete. But there is a big problem with it. Where would I put it? That's the truth of it, guys. If I could get this, and I have had a chance to buy it before, where would I put it? I found somebody that was selling it for $60 in the box. The only thing it was missing was the little tabs that go on the top of the panels that kind of connect the panels to one another. And I could have created those myself. But I remember telling myself, where would I put it? Like, what am I going to do with that? I don't know. My second grail for that, realistically, if they made an original series bridge set in the Playmate style, I would buy it. The closest they have ever come is there is a collection box with the entire original crew that comes on a kind of cardboard bridge. That would be the closest that I would ever get, realistically. The only way I'm going to get that bridge is if I was to make it myself. And believe me, it has crossed my mind before. Here's one we don't really cover too often when I do figure reviews and stuff like that. Because for the most part, a lot of my buying inside of Dragon Ball Z has died out. But a kind of new mini passion has kind of formed inside of my Dragon Ball Z collecting. I have found that I like these models, this one and this one. And I actually have reviews for her and a review for this Goku on the channel. Dragon Ball Z was one of the biggest animes of my life and still stands as one of my top rank favorite animes ever created in the history of all anime. I love Dragon Ball Z. But you'll notice I'm incredibly particular about it. I was buying Dragon Stars. I simply don't like them. So I sold all of them. All of them. I got rid of all of them. I do collect statues from time to time. But in the long run, I'm not a statues guy. I like them, yes. In fact, one of my all-time favorite statues right here was a gift from a friend of mine. That Trunks came from an anime con where my friend went to the anime con and I didn't. All of a sudden I got a phone call. And that phone call said, who's your favorite Dragon Ball Z character? If you had to choose one, who is he? Who's your all-time favorite Dragon Ball Z character? And at the time, because we all change and grow over time, it was future Trunks. He still sits as a high second place. But the last 2 times I watched this property, and the last 2 times I read this property through from start to finish, I started in Dragon Ball and went all the way to the end of Dragon Ball Z, manga-wise. I made a discovery that I can't believe I never noticed before. I always had mad respect for him. And always was kind of mad that things like Team 4-Star had turned him into a joke and that everybody laughed at him. Because for some reason, in my mind, I always took him very serious. And I know that even the shows sometimes will crap on him. And you got this thing that runs through people now, that runs through the regular fan base, where they think that the jokes, that the memes and things like that are the real material. Just like people will see memes for He-Man and then they will reassociate that and assume that's what He-Man actually is. It's not. I found out when I went back and watched the entire original series. That series is goofy, it's childish at heart, it's fun, it's playful, but when it's serious, it's also very serious, and it's well crafted. It's way better crafted. In fact, I'm going to say this, it is better crafted as a show, as a standalone, you can watch these Barbarian Adventure shows than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of the 80s. It is. As far as I'm concerned, the 80s Ninja Turtles, toy commercial. He-Man, actual show. There is reason to believe that without the toys, it still would have made a reasonable cartoon series. But this kind of thing permeates Krillin. People see Krillin, and they think of the memes, and they think of the jokes, and they think of the misinformed, and this joke that, whoa, what, did Krillin die again? So let's get this straight. Krillin died in Dragon Ball one time. Once, that's one. So he's got one death on his record. One death on his record. He then gets brought back. Okay. Other people died. And they were big characters, too, that died in Dragon Ball. And they also get brought back, so no shame on Krillin as far as I'm concerned. If Master Roshi bites the dust, and he was easily the strongest guy in Dragon Ball, then no. I'm sorry. No. No shame on Krillin. Let's go to Dragon Ball Z. Krillin dies against Frieza. There's one. One. Is that fair? Yes. Krillin did get killed by Frieza. It is a huge event. It is remarkably important. And not just because of the Super Saiyan, but because of the emotional impact. Without the death of Krillin, that transformation doesn't have bite. Period. And why? Because Krillin is important. He's not a joke. Killing Krillin kills part of the heart and soul of the Dragon Ball saga. Because he is important. He is a friend. He is trustworthy. He is strong. He is loyal. He is brave. He is a hero. Now, when else did he die in Dragon Ball Z? Let's see. Let me think. Android Saga? Nope. Alive. Cell Saga? Nope. Alive. Buu Saga? Or rather, pre-Saga to Buu Saga, whatever you want to call that. Fat Buu Saga? Nope. Alive. Super Buu Spoopy Saga? Dies. But, just like I said back in Dragon Ball, no shame, because literally every single character in all of Dragon Ball, including the people we've never even seen, every townsmember, everything dies. No shame on Krillin. Buu wiped out the entirety of the Earth. The only survivors of the Buu saga were literally Goku, Vegeta, Hercule, a dog, the Supreme Kai, which I guess that doesn't even really count because he wasn't really there. Dende. Like, you get where I'm going with this? You can't shame Krillin for having been killed in that point when everybody died. So Krillin's death count, interestingly enough, could be argued is the same amount of times as Goku. Right? I mean, Goku dies against Raditz. Goku dies against Cell. There's 2 times in DBZ. And one could argue that Goku was supposed to be dead in Dragon Ball, but was lucky that a Dragon Ball was hit by the Dondanpa. Now, I get that we could make that argument against Krillin as well, and we could say things like, well then, if we're going to count that, then how come Krillin doesn't get knocked for every time that he almost died? Because when Krillin is beat up, he's beat up. He's not beat up and barely escapes death, he's beat up. And then nobody finished the job. Goku was hit. 100% dead on. Straight chest shot. Dodonpa! Tao Pai Pai won. And it was only absolute dumb luck. Not like when Krillin gets kicked in the neck. And then goes across the battlefield and then they never went over there to finish him off. That's not the same thing. That's Krillin defeated. Krillin defeated. Goku also gets defeated sometimes. He gets beat up. Krillin defeated is not the same thing as Krillin should be dead. Goku should have been dead in Dragon Ball. And if we argue that point, and maybe I'm being stipulative here, but I'm just trying to explain, then that puts Goku at should have been dead once in Dragon Ball. That would tie them. Does die twice in Dragon Ball Z. That would tie them. But everybody died on Krillin time. Goku sacrificed himself in an almost ridiculously stupid way, because why didn't he just do this, teleport him somewhere, and then zip away immediately? He had time. He literally appears on King Kai's planet, has time to turn around and go, I didn't know where else to bring him, dead. But if you have that kind of time and you move the kind of speed that Goku does, he could have appeared, grabbed, no, he doesn't even have to grab King Kai. King Kai also knows instant transmission. So he just dies due to not thinking? He doesn't even have to do this. He teleports like that during a Kamehameha, meaning at any point in time, as long as he's locked onto a power signature, he can just go there. And he just came from a place with all the power signatures that matter. So, zip to King Kai's, you better get out of here, zip back, King Kai knows exactly what's going on, King Kai also zips there, nobody dies. Maybe the monkey. But the monkey was also standing right next to King Kai, so no. And Gregory can just, disappear, because he kind of lives there, but he lives there after, he gets screamed at, and then he shows up, so, he could just fly away. Nobody dies. You see why I'm a little lost as to how much hate comes Krillin's way and this constant joke that he's dying? I know I just went on a huge tangent, but I guess what I'm saying is that maybe my Grail is an absolute awesome Krillin. And I think there is one, because I think the models here that I would kind of like to start collecting them, I think there's a really good Krillin in those models. So maybe my Grail is very obtainable. Or a really awesome Krillin statue, like doing the Destructo Disc or something, I don't know. This one's hard. But I always have a lot to say about Dragon Ball Z, and mostly it does come down to the mistreatment of characters. G.I. Joe is a rough one. I don't have a collection goal for G.I. Joe. I'm cherry-picking hard. And I also don't necessarily have a Grail for G.I. Joe, but it is a focus. This is something that I'm kind of mild focusing on. I'm buying a lot of G.I. Joes. I noticed that. It is starting to happen. I mean, originally, when I started this, I had Cobra, Snake Eyes, I had Scarlet. That was it. That was literally it. That's where it started. It was 3 figures. I always loved Snake Eyes. I don't feel like Snake Eyes should not be without Scarlet. And Cobra Commander is just neat looking. And he's a really ridiculously kind of iconic bad guy, so I bought him. And the next thing I knew, I was buying Jungle Recondo. I was buying Scarlet. I was buying Lady J. I was buying the Baroness. I was buying Zorana. And it just keep finding them that I want. So, this one I don't have a Grail for. I don't have anything that I could speak of that is a Grail. No, there's maybe one. Maybe one Grail. But realistically, I don't know what I would do with it. It would be really cool to have the G.I. Joe jet that I've seen. I've seen some really cool jets in G.I. Joe. Not like one of the Cobra ones, but the Joe jet. It would be really awesome to have one of those. In this scale, with a pilot. That might be about it. Because this was not a line that I was hard focused on when I was a kid. And it's not a line that I hard focus on now. I am still cherry picking it, but I am buying it a lot. So I felt like it deserved some talk. But picking a Grail for this line, this one is tough. Because I don't think I necessarily have one. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not every toy line that you collect has a Grail. Some stuff is just cool toys. And really, I think that's where this falls with me. So this one's kind of funny. Because I didn't have a Grail originally. I didn't. I did not have a Grail. And now I do, and I've already got it. So look. And this is gonna sound wild. A collection goal of mine is to continue cherry picking the things I want. I definitely want to finish the Super Scroll, and I want to get all of the Black Suit Fantastic Four on the shelf. All of them. The only two that I really have left to hunt down at this point, well, okay, that's not fair. I have to buy Mr. Fantastic, I have to buy the kids, I have to buy Johnny Storm. I've got all the blue suits, and I'm happy with them, the classic ones. So now I'm going for all the more modern versions, and I've almost got them. I'm real close to having them all, and so I really have no worry about finishing that goal. I think I'm going to hit that goal without even having to worry about it. I pretty much have a lot of the X-Men that I want, and X-Men 97 is filling in gaps fantastically. And I pick up things here and there that I want, so collection goals aren't too hard. Like, I'd like to get the Captain America that I want, and things like that, to kind of slowly fill out an Avengers roster, and it'd be really cool to have a solid Hulk. Things of that nature, absolutely, I'm on board. And I've already got other things on the way that I thought that I would never get, but now they're already on the way, so, like, I'm not complaining. Because, like, I already got the Colossus Juggernaut pack and things of that nature. But I did always have a goal. A Grail that was out of reach because they just refused to do it. I always wanted Danny Ketch Ghost Rider. I know this sounds ridiculous, like this is too perfect, but I'm serious about this. I got asked this on Fandom Night a while back. Somebody was asking me something, I can't remember exactly what, it had to do with toys, and I said that if I ever wanted a Ghost Rider, they haven't made mine yet. And I don't want, there's a very specific Ghost Rider I want. I want the Ghost Rider that I remember that crossed over in a story with Spider-Man, that was the Ghost Rider I remember at the time. He's the one that catches my attention. He's the one that I like. He's the one that I want. And that they'd never made it. And that if they did make him, I don't want him if he doesn't come with his bike, so I'm probably never going to get him. Then, like magic, Hasbro all of a sudden says, hey, Danny Ketch with the bike. Only problem I see with the bike, there's 2 holes in the front of the bike. Those should be headlights. Those were headlights. I'm sure that maybe I can kind of find a way to fix that myself. I'm not a customizer, but that can't be that hard. And does it matter in the long run? Will I care that much? Probably not. But yeah, strangely enough, I do have a Grail, and they've already fulfilled it, created it rather, and I've already ordered it. So like that's wild that just worked out that way. But yeah, I've already got this one. Gundams. Gundams, I have a collection goal, and it's very simple. It's very, 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 very simple. I want the entire wave of Wing Gundam model kits. When I was growing up, and I already did a video here called like my history with Gunpla and my history with Gundam. Both pretty good videos. Recommend. Go try them out. But listen. Those were the ones that started me out. When I first bought Gundam, Gunpla stuff, that's what I bought. That's what was out at the time. And I bought every single one that I could get my hands on, which pretty much was the entire wave of Gundam Wing Gunpla, starting with Death Scythe and moving from there. I'm halfway to doing that collection goal again. I'm almost there. I've got almost everything. Do I have a Grail here, though? Something that is like absolute? In a way, I might. My favorite is the Goof Custom. If I could get a Goof Custom, like the 1B, the one with the chain gun on the shield, if I could get a master grade of that, that's a Grail. because he is still, to this day, probably my favorite mobile suit ever put on film ever. So if I had to pick, if I had to say this is it, that's probably it. Is that obtainable? I've never went out of my way to see if they've made one. So I don't know. But that would probably be what it is. So here's a set. DC stuff. DC figures. Do I have a Grail? Something that I consider to be mostly unobtainable. Yes. Maybe you could probably tag this as two of them. I want that classic Wonder Woman from the McFarlane line, and on top of that, it would be fantastic to get a issue 1000 Superman. I think that Wonder Woman, that Superman, and these Batmen right here would be the absolute trinity standing next to each other. They would be diamonds in the collection. I think that's probably what I want. You could probably call that a collection goal, but sometimes Grails and collection goals go hand in hand, because I do feel that Superman is overpriced, and it blows my mind that he's not reusing that thing. Because as far as I'm concerned, he makes bad Superman after bad Superman after bad Superman after bad Superman. Like, they're terrible. I hate most every single Superman that this line has put out. But I do like that issue 1000 Superman. And at this point, he's basically an $80 figure, which puts him above the limit of what I believe he's worth, because he's a $20 figure. And by now, they should have either A, reissued him, or B, they should have just basically reused him completely. But every time I see a Superman come out, I either hate the body or hate the head. He's the only one I've seen that I feel made sense, and I couldn't get him, so that kind of puts him in Grail territory. And that Wonder Woman, I also missed an opportunity to grab her up when I had the chance, so she also is kind of sitting in Grail status right now, because she also costs a lot of money if you try to get one, if you can even find somebody willing to part with her, because a lot of people liked her. I don't want the classic color one, I want the other one. I know that sounds kind of crazy, because people are like, why wouldn't you want the classic color one? That's the chase one. That's not the one I want. But that's probably where I sit in Grail territory for this stuff. Collection goals? Lanterns. Look, when he does solid work, he does solid work. I've already got a Kyle Rayner that I like. I would like to get lanterns. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that is a solid collection goal for this line. And that's really what this shelf has kind of become, because that's kind of all DC is right now, is McFarlane Toys. Yes, we are back to Motu, this time Origins. I've already got it. Eternia. I spent the money. I backed it. I got it. I opened it. I already did a full unboxing review of it. And I love it. It is super cool. It is everything I wanted it to be. My Grail concept for it at this point would be to find a perfect place to put it in a way that I could utilize it, because it is tough to utilize. It's very large, it's tough to display, almost impossible to display. It cannot be displayed in here, but as I'm slowly building my garage into like a collection studio where I keep certain toys, old video games, and my boxing equipment, well, that feels like a solid place where it could go. And then slowly but surely, I could move some of these out there and make a really cool display. One of my goals, I'm hoping maybe this summer, maybe towards the middle of summer, I'm not sure. I hope to create a shelving system just like that for the garage across the entirety of the wall. If I do that, I might make the bottom shelf like a table shelf, like a long floating table shelf. It's going to be drilled into concrete. It's not going to go anywhere. I don't have to worry about it like not supporting the weight. It's going to be supported by brackets attached to the wall, so I'm not scared of any of that. I will have no issue once I get everything set up. But I think that might be a type of grail, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with toys. It has to do with the grail. The dream is to display it. And that is tricky. Now, this one's going to take people and make people go, wait, what? Didn't we already talk about DC? We did. But we didn't talk about Wonder Woman. Yes, I know this is going to sound wild. But Wonder Woman is probably my favorite DC hero, period. My favorite DC team is the Green Lanterns. But here's the thing. The difference is that I like a lot of lanterns. My favorite lantern would be Kyle Rayner. But that being said, I love the lanterns as a core and as a giant storyline. Like a group. But I like Wonder Woman as Wonder Woman. And it is my actual collection goal in time, just like I'm currently doing. I am building complete collections of a couple of things. One, Conan the Barbarian. I may do this for my entire life and never actually complete this goal, but I'm currently finishing out the original Marvel years, and then I'll go from there. I'm just going to keep buying Conan all the time. Two, I am buying the epic collections of all Fantastic Four. All of it. I really like it. Fantastic Four is an excellent viewpoint to watch where comics were when he came up with the idea for the Fantastic Four, when him and Kirby pushed this idea to the front. And watching them develop into the team they become, and watching the Marvel Universe build around them is fantastic. I didn't mean to. I literally did not mean to do that. Sorry, not a dad joke, but I'll take it. You can credit me. But no, I'm serious. Watching like the X-Men come in, watching like the Avengers come in, watching Daredevil come in, watching all these people show up as the Fantastic Four kind of lead the way into a new era of comic books that pushes new concepts and new serious takes is amazing. It's so good. They are the best viewpoint of the Marvel Universe. In a personal opinion, they are the best viewpoint of the evolution of the Marvel Universe. You can literally watch the seriousness of Marvel come into play over time, affect the team, push the narrative forward, allow them to evolve, and watch the universe evolve around them. And what's amazing about the Fantastic Four is they never stop evolving. And because of that, when you watch characters that did finally go through some evolution and then all of a sudden they get booted back to where they were, you kind of see it in the Fantastic Four, that now they're ahead of the development process of the other characters because the other characters have to stay in that green area where they're always worth telling stories and making money. You can't allow them to get old or grow up or do certain things that would like compromise the kind of character they are. So I love that. My goal in DC, however, I only have one line of comic books that I would love to own complete. And I know that some of them are bad, but I'd love to own it. Whether it be in Showcase or something like that, I would love to have all the Wonder Woman comics. All of them. She is my favorite standalone superhero. I love the heart, the search for truth, and the way she is about her villains, her life, and her friends. I don't see it from any other characters. Superman being the closest. Batman doesn't even come close. I like Batman. I do think he's serious. And I think when he works very, 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 very well. I will not discount the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of good comic books. In fact, I would argue that he has better comic books than Wonder Woman, but that doesn't change the way I feel. Wonder Woman, because of who she is my favorite hero in all of DC. Do I have a grail for Wonder Woman? I basically collect figures and statues that stand out to me. Eras and stopping points and in time. And I have some good ones. This is only one part of the Wonder Woman collection. What am I missing? What's the grail? What would absolutely put the cherry on top, right? A solid Linda Carter. Full body, solid Linda Carter would really just put the cherry on top. I would love to have a solid Linda Carter. But if I'm being honest with myself, it wouldn't stop there. I know, because I love Wonder Woman. I see Wonder Woman pieces and figures all the time that catch my attention. Not that I buy all of them. Sometimes they overdo the warrior aspect and they lose who she is and they get a little too serious. And sometimes the only choice is like McFarlane figures, and I just don't think they're good figures for some reason when they do Wonder Woman anyway. So like I just don't want them. But dang it, if I don't see statues all the time that just... They just bring feelings out in me. I love Wonder Woman. I really do. So a grail, a Linda Carter on the shelf. An absolute solid piece Linda Carter. That's my grail. Star Wars. Okay. This one is going to be wild. In terms of a collection goal, there's only one thing I really want. Just to collect the characters I grew up with. That's it. It's that simple. I have a Luke, I'm happy. I have a Han, I'm happy. I have my favorite Leia, I'm happy. Would I love a good action figure of the slave suit Leia? Yes, honestly, I would. And I don't care how that sounds. Yes, honestly, I would. I do still see that as a viable part of the history of Star Wars, an iconic moment to own in plastic. Yes. But all the ones that I've ever seen, I've laughed at. I just think most of them are very, very bad figures. They're just bad figures, and I don't want them. Maybe it's because that Leia shows a lot of skin, and maybe the sculpts aren't really designed for that. Maybe that's the reason it doesn't work. I don't know. I've never been interested in one enough to actually buy it, and statues are not the same argument. Collection goal, that's all I'm after. I have Palpatine, and I'm slowly getting things here and there that fill in the gaps. Like this Stormtrooper that I'm actually not thrilled with. I think he's kind of a bad figure, in all honesty, but we've already talked about that. However, a grail, and this is going to sound wild, a grail, for me, would be if they released a playset, like a 6-inch playset of the Emperor's throne room. No, it doesn't have to be super extravagant. I just want it. It would be an amazing action set. I want the window, the chair. It needs to actually be able to turn around. It needs to fit the figures properly. Not like a weird chair where the figures can't actually sit in it. It needs the little staircase. It needs enough space up on the front, up where the chair is. And where the window is, there needs to be enough space for Luke, Vader, and the Emperor to stand there realistically, just like they did in the movie. So I can set up that scene where Luke is looking out the window, he's right there, and Vader's right next to him. I need that scene. If you can't do that, I don't want it. Next, it needs to have a bit of a staircase that goes down, that goes into kind of an extending platform of sorts. That is an area where they can sword fight. That's a grail. if they did the throne room in Black Series 6-inch scale, that's what I want. Pokemon. Yes, believe it or not, I do, and I don't talk about it too often. I mean, I do. Every now and then there's a video where they creep in. I still love Pokemon for what it's worth. I'm not a crazy collector of Pokemon, and I don't really go out of my way necessarily to obtain them, but I have two things in terms of collection goals. One is to replace this guy. I don't like this. I wish I had a better plush for Squirtle. And I also have a Charmander behind him. I would like to replace him. Those two things are part of my collection goal. My grail is to have solid, and I mean solid, just as solid as him, just as solid as him, just as solid as him, and him back here. Solid versions of Cyndaquil, Quilava, and Typhlosion. Those are my favorite 3 Pokemon in the history of all Pokemon, ever. And if I'm going to go in that direction, I would kind of love to have a really solid Excadrill, as well as a Sandshrew. But if they're not solid plushies, or if they're not like fully posable figures, like the new figures that are coming out, I don't want them. There you go. So that's it. I went over the collection for what it's worth. I talked about it. This is a pretty long episode, but it was definitely meant to be a type of podcast. That is primarily what this show is we talk about toys. Sometimes I do it in live format when we hang out. Sometimes I open one toy at a time and I talk all the different toy subjects that come to mind while we're in the middle of a toy review. That's what I like to do here. And so I've been thinking about this for a while. What are the grails and goals of the collection? Sometimes that's hard to determine. And sometimes I don't know exactly where that thought process takes me. And really, a goal for the show would be to, get through that. To actually open everything over there and talk about every single item. But we'll get there. This is a podcast type show. I'm just talking toys here. We'll go one toy at a time and we will get there. But yeah, that's all I wanted to do with this. Guys, if you made it to the end of the video, I honestly do appreciate it. And if you have grails and goals, post them below. I'm always interested. My collection is not your collection. Your collection is not my collection. We all feel differently about this subject matter, and that's why our goals and grails are so different. And they're ours. Mine don't need to be yours. Yours don't need to be mine. They're important to us. And those are mine. What are yours? I'm honestly curious. Later on, guys.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.